Welcome to Study Time, a televised home learning program produced by Rwanda Education Board.
Hello students, a very warm welcome to the TV learning programs or episodes. I'm your biology teacher, Herbert, and I will be with Senior 2 class. And the class of Senior 2, today we are going to discuss about Unit 12, and which is a very interesting lesson or unit, which is concerning about infectious diseases. And lesson 1, we're going to talk about the transmission of infectious diseases. So students, welcome to the lesson. And I would like to let you get a pen, a notebook, and we start our lesson. And even I would like to tell the parents to hang around to help some of the students to do the lesson assessment and even to help them where necessary. So students, let's start our lesson. So we're going to discuss about the lesson has 2 main objectives. After studying this lesson, every student should be able to define what is called a pathogen, able to talk about transmissible diseases, and even what are the hosts that can just host some of the diseases. We are able to explain about the transmission of the infectious diseases. So when you talk about infectious diseases, I know there are very many diseases which are very infectious, which can just be caused either direct or indirect contact. Take an example, when you are in direct contact with some of the disease-causing agents, these are pathogens, or when you are in direct contact. Take an example, some of us in our homes, we find we are staying with rodents, we stay with cockroach, flea, mosquitoes. All these can transmit diseases to human. So we're going to talk about what you call infectious disease. What is infectious disease? Student, I would like to ask you, what do you understand by infectious disease? Infectious disease sometimes is also known as a communicable disease. They are diseases that are transmitted from one person to another. Take an example, these days we have the high increase of coronavirus. It is spread from one person to another. It can just be referred to be an infectious disease or a communicable disease. There are diseases that are transmitted from one person to another. These diseases are usually caused by harmful microorganisms. Not all microorganisms. Some we have useful microorganisms, but we also have some organisms which are harmful. Examples of microorganisms include the viruses. Take an example, COVID-19 is a virus. We have some of the diseases caused by the fungi. We have some diseases caused by protozoa and even the bacteria. All these viruses, fungi, protozoa, bacteria can cause diseases. And these diseases, they are infectious diseases. How is the transmission of the infectious diseases can happen? I said these infectious diseases can be spread either in direct contact or indirect or direct contact. When you are directly in contact with the disease-causing agent, or when you are in direct contact. Take an example like fleas. Take an example like rodents or rats. Take an example like cockroach. All these can be easily to spread the infectious diseases and are capable of spreading from one person. These organisms can easily spread the disease from one person to another, either direct or indirect. When you are either directly in contact with the organism, with the microorganism, or when you are in direct contact, can also cause the infectious disease. What is a pathogen? A pathogen we can refer to as any microorganism. Any disease-causing agent is referred to as a pathogen. This is any disease-causing microorganism. Virus is a disease-causing microorganism. Protozoa are disease-causing microorganism. bacteria, and viruses that can cause disease are referred to as pathogen. A disease-causing agent in biology are referred to as pathogens. Pathogens are also known as germs. There's a common word, a common term, say they are germs. Germs are disease-causing agents. They cause disease to human. So transmissible diseases, these are diseases capable of spreading from one person to another. For example, common cold. Common cold is an example of transmissible diseases which can be transmitted from one person to another. Let's talk about most of these diseases or germs. They have a host. They have a host. If we talk about what is a host, and I mentioned about a host, this is an organ that harbors, that hibernates, that harbors a disease-causing microorganism. Let's have some example of the diseases of what we call hosts. These organs that can harbor disease-causing microorganisms. For example, we have water snails, a host of what we call cystostoma that causes bilharzia. We have a vector. We say the host, any organism that can harbor a disease-causing microorganism are referred to as a host. As I mentioned, we talked about snails. They are good hosts of what you call schistosomiasis that causes bilharzia. Most of the people who are living in wells and even in water places, you find some of the young babies swimming in water places, and eventually they suffer from bilharzia. And one of the hosts that hosts that disease is snails. We have a vector. What is a vector? This is a living organ that can transmit the infectious disease between human beings or from animals to human beings. They can transmit the disease from animals to human beings or from human beings from animals to human beings. The disease can just be spread from animals to human beings. Take an example, like female Anopheles mosquito is a vector to the Plasmodium parasite, malaria. So Anopheles mosquito is the vector that causes malaria, because Anopheles mosquito is a Plasmodium parasite that causes malaria in human, the female one. Let's talk about carriers. What are carriers, student? Take your time and think, what are carriers? These days, when we talk about carriers, let me just use a simple example of a person who is suffering from coronavirus. This person who has been infected but develops no signs or symptoms can just become a carrier. If a person is not showing any signs and symptoms of the virus, but he is able to transmit the disease from one person to another person, that one is referred to as carriers. So when we talk about this person is capable of transmitting the disease to another person. So he's a carrier. He's having a disease. And eventually the person is not showing any signs and symptoms of the disease, but is able to transmit the disease from one person to another person. That one is referred to as a carrier. This is a person who has been infected, but develops no signs or symptoms of the disease. And this person is capable of transmitting the disease to other people. You may be having a disease, but you don't show the signs and symptoms of the disease. If you don't show the signs and symptoms of the disease, you are a carrier. You are able to spread the disease or transmitting the disease to other people. And eventually you find other people are getting infected because there are no signs and symptoms of the patient showing that is suffering from the disease. Let me talk about signs. These are visible expressions brought about by the disease. Visible expression that brought about by the disease is referred to as signs and symptoms. Let me talk an example of people who are suffering, maybe an example of malaria. What are the signs and symptoms of malaria? There is headache, high temperature, body temperature will be increased. Automatically, those signs and symptoms, these are visible expressions. You are able to see them. They are visible expressions brought about by the disease. For example, red spots on your body. If you have red spots on your body, what happens? There must be signs and symptoms that shows you are suffering from red spots on your body. So what is the difference? What is the difference between signs and symptoms? I said signs are visible expressions. You can see them with your eyes. Visible expression brought about by the disease. Then symptoms are physical or mental features that is regarded as indicating the condition of the disease, particularly such as feature that is felt by patient, for example, nausea, dizziness, and even headache. These are symptoms. Let's talk about epidemiology, the study of all factors that contributes to the appearance of a particular disease. We have doctors, they are specialists in disease-causing agent, infectious diseases. They are referred to as epidemiologists. Epidemiology is the study of all factors that contributes to the appearance of a particular disease. So that one is referred to as epidemiology. Then the people who studies, they are called epidemiologists, and they are able to identify the signs and symptoms of a disease and able to say the disease is this. Infections can be spread in several different ways. Some of these are listed below. We have diseases that are transmitted through the air. Diseases that are caused through the air are referred to as airborne disease. Student, I would like to ask you, can you mention one disease that is caused, that is spread or that is transmitted through air? An airborne disease. I will give you some time to think about it, and you tell me the disease that is caused by, that is transmitted through air. Good. You mentioned about tuberculosis. Tuberculosis, or TB, is an airborne disease. It is caused through air. When you are seated with someone who is suffering from tuberculosis and he coughs, when he coughs, immediately a person can get infected through inhaling the infected air, that having some of the tuberculosis. Another one is common cold. All these are examples of airborne diseases, diseases that are caused, that are transmitted through air. So I said diseases that are transmitted through air are referred to as airborne diseases. These includes tuberculosis, common colds are examples of airborne disease. Some diseases are transmitted through consumption of contaminated water or food. Some people, they can suffer from a disease when they take in a contaminated water. That's why we have to talk about in biology. Biology is health. Biology concerning about our body function. When you take a contaminated water, you take water which is contaminated, you can end up having some diseases. When you eat food which is contaminated, the food that is contaminated, take an example, at home, some of you may find there's a yellow banana, and you find the rat comes and eats on a yellow banana. And eventually you come and you remove that small piece where the rodent or the rat ate. Eventually you may think that maybe the remaining part is safe. How sure are you that the remaining part is safe? And you eventually eat that remaining part of the yellow banana. and eventually you find that that food has been contaminated. Some flies can come in a dirty places, in a dustbin, and comes when they find the food is not closed. And you come and eat that food which has been left in open spaces, the flies can access the food easily. And eventually, what happens? You are eating a food which is contaminated, which can spread the disease, which can transmit the disease into your body. That's why I mentioned about infectious diseases can be transmitted either in direct or indirect, whether they direct or indirect contact. And these are referred to as eating food which has been contaminated, taking water that has been contaminated, and that one it can just be referred to as taking water that has been contaminated, that one can cause waterborne disease. Taking food that has been contaminated can cause foodborne disease, respectively. Examples of the diseases caused by taking contaminated food, drinking water that has been contaminated. We have cholera, we have typhoid. Very many people are suffering from typhoid. And when you visit a doctor or you visit a physician, and they tell you that you are suffering from cholera or typhoid, what you should just be expecting, you ate food or you took water that has been contaminated. All right? So these are diseases caused by taking a contaminated food or drinking a contaminated water. We also have other diseases that can just be, some of the diseases that are passed into a person through blood transfusion. Take an example, HIV/AIDS. Through blood transfusion or contact with a contaminated blood. When you get in contact with a contaminated blood, you can also suffer from a disease. Take an example, HIV/AIDS. As you know, based on statistics today, most of the countries that are found in sub-Saharan region, we are sub-Saharan countries, we are also belonging, there is a big percentage of HIV-positive patients. They can just be through contact with a person, by a blood contact with a person who is infected, and it is through blood transfusion, contact with a contaminated blood. Examples of diseases that can be spread through contaminated blood, we have HIV/AIDS, and even malaria. You can ask a question to yourself, how is malaria how is it transmitted from one person to another person? When a mosquito comes and sucks the blood from a blood of a person who is infected with malaria, automatically sucks some of what you call sporozoites, which can just be transmitted to another person and a person gets infected. So, through blood transfusion, a person can also suffer from disease. Let's have a diagram. What do you see in the diagram? Why do you think why do you think that the photo picked, where I picked the photo from? We have someone is just lying in a bed. What I can see, what I've tried to mention, he's a patient. He's sick. He's in the hospital. He's been admitted. A contaminated blood used during a blood transfusion can lead into a transmission of disease. Let's have that patient, maybe the patient was not affected. But when he gets the blood that has been contaminated, it's likely for him to suffer from the disease. Through blood transfusion, a person can suffer from the infection, from infectious disease. So physical contact with an infected person can transmit the disease. These infectious diseases are transmitted through what you call contagious. We have ever had, maybe for us, we got a chance of not suffering from Ebola, because the government tried very many strategies to prevent it. But when we talk about Ebola, it's a contagious disease. They can just be spread from one person to another person very easily. All right? And this includes ringworms. People suffer from ringworms, being in contact with a person who is suffering from ringworms. Scabies. These are scabies. We talk about the skin rashes. When you are staying with someone, when you are sharing these basins, seeing that basins, buckets, most of the time you are likely, if your person is suffering from scabies, you're also likely to suffer from scabies. Another disease that is caused by physical contact, we talk about Ebola. That's why you have to try to distance yourself from people who are suffering from Ebola. We have communicable diseases are also spread by vectors. These are therefore known as what you call vector-borne diseases. For example, sleeping sickness. Sleeping sickness, which is caused by tsetse fly, is a vector-borne disease and is spread by tsetse flies. Malaria is also spread by female Anopheles mosquito. These are vector-borne diseases. These are diseases caused by vectors. A vector is an organ that transmits a disease. All right? Yellow fever, on the other hand, is also spread by a black fly and some of the species of mosquitoes. And even some of the species of mosquitoes can also spread the disease. Some of the infectious diseases, some of the infections can also be spread through unprotected sexual intercourse, praying sex without protecting yourself. When you pray sex and you don't protect yourself, you are likely to suffer from sexual transmitted infections. That's why the government, the Ministry of Health tries to provide some of the condoms in order to protect ourselves from sexual transmitted infections, STIs. Examples of STIs, we have HIV/AIDS. Number 7, germ can also be spread from a mother to her unborn child. That is, the disease cannot be spread from the mother to the child through the placenta, usually through the blood or other body fluids. When the fluid of the child is in contact with the fluid of the mother, the child is likely to suffer from the germs. They can also pass through a contact with the skin or mucous membrane directly during delivery. When a child is being delivered, he can also suffer from the disease. So, we've been talking about the infectious disease. We pass through all these 7 ways how disease can be spread from one person to another person. And I want to go through again. We start from number 1 so that we make a summary of our lesson. I said one of the ways of transmission of the disease is airborne disease. Diseases can just be passed from one person to another person through airborne disease. We mentioned the example. We are talking about how diseases can be transmitted. We are talking about transmission of infectious diseases. How diseases can just be transmitted from one person to another person. We mentioned almost there are 7 ways how the diseases can be transmitted from one person to another person. We said one way is air. The disease can be transmitted through air. We are ending our lesson. We are summarizing our lesson. We said through air. We talked about if it is through air, we mentioned it is airborne disease. Examples, we talked about tuberculosis and common cold. Number 2, we said some of diseases can also be transmitted through consumption. Taking food that has been contaminated, taking water that has been contaminated can also cause disease. And we said those diseases that are transmitted through taking food that has been contaminated or water that has been contaminated, we mentioned about airborne disease, foodborne disease, and etc. Number 3, we said blood also, it can also be passing through blood transfusion or contact with a contaminated blood. When you come in contact with a contaminated blood, you are likely, not only a contaminated blood, any fluid that is infected can also cause a disease. Take an example, we talked about HIV, AIDS, and even malaria. And we had the example of a patient showing that he's going to suffer from disease because of blood transfusion. That's why blood has to be tested thoroughly to see if the blood is safe and be going to be stored in what you call blood bank. We have physical contact. Infected person can transmit the disease. These are examples. When you're in contact, direct contact with a person who is suffering from disease, we call it what you call contagious. Number 5, communicable diseases are also spread by vectors. We also have some diseases that are spread by the vectors, which are called vector-borne diseases. For example, sleeping sickness, malaria, yellow fever, and etc. We have also diseases that can also be transmitted through some infections. Infection can also spread through unprotected sex. You can also suffer from disease through doing unprotected sex. So when we talk about safe sex, that is doing sex when it is protected. When it comes to unsafe, to unprotected sex, that is sex done when it is not protected. We said the last one is through germs. Germ can also spread from a mother to her unborn child. A child can get infected through mother, so that is all. So let's test our competence because we are ending our lesson concerning about transmission of diseases. There are almost 3 numbers. Which one of the following is a vector? For sleeping sickness, we have tsetse fly, mosquito, black fly, and even trypanosoma. If you come in contact with a person who was coughing, which disease are you likely to catch or to suffer? Number 3, name 2 diseases transmitted through transfusion of contaminated blood. You mentioned the disease that you can suffer from by getting a contaminated blood. So student, thank you very much for being with me in my lesson. And I wish you the best and stay safe. See you next time.